Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Smart Money Moves. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. You know, it's tough to avoid money issues, from coping with sticker shock on food staples like eggs to uncertainty about the economy and jobs. In this episode, we're getting into the best actions you can take now and how to keep money worries from messing with your mood. The financial picture can be confusing. Wall Street paid out record high bonuses, $47.5 billion in 2024. But some experts say the two-year bull run of growing stock profits may slow down in 2025 due to politics and policy changes. Wells Fargo Advisors Senior Vice President Mark C. Smith says it's the best of times for some, challenging times for many.
On Main Street, you're seeing folks struggle to pay for food, energy. The cost of goods have skyrocketed.
On top of rising prices for key necessities like food and utilities, many companies and industries are changing their operations and laying off workers as AI and other tech advances revamp production methods. AI is not going away, so learning and skills building now needs to be ongoing, says CNET Money editor Dashia Milden.
Think about if AI can do it, but how can you do it better? It's not always about speed, but it's also about accuracy. It's about trustworthiness and credibility. And those are things that when comparing to a robot, I don't think that there's much of a comparison there for me.
Money stress can get more intense during times of financial uncertainty, but you have more control than you realize if you're in touch with your emotions, says financial therapist and author Lindsay Bryan-Podvin.
And I think it's important for people to know that we make most of our financial decisions not based on a perfect budget or based on projections. We make 80% of our financial decisions based on how we feel.
Let's get into this more right now with our panel. Joining me is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She's a financial therapist, an author, and a social worker. Lindsay, thanks for being with us.
Hi, Lisa. Thrilled to be here.
Great to have you. Also with us is Dashia Milden. She's a personal financial writer, and she's also the CNET Money editor, and she has seen a lot going on. Dashia, thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Mark C. Smith. He's the Senior Vice President and Portfolio Manager for Wells Fargo Advisors. Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
We appreciate it. Mark, when you look around at the economy and what's going on with the money, it's your job to watch all of these moves every single day. What do you see happening?
Well, listen, this is a tale of two cities. And I don't know if you remember that book from high school, but it was the best of times and the worst of times. That's what I'm seeing when I look at the economy. You have some of the, folks who are making the most in this country doing fairly well. The stock market is near record highs. Unemployment is very low, and inflation seems in check compared to where it was 2 years ago. But what you're seeing on Main Street, you're seeing that the prices of everything from eggs to energy are near record highs. I looked at the grocery store index, and you're seeing that all the main staples are up sometimes 30 to 40% from the pandemic levels. And so that's not going down. I haven't seen anything substantially telling me that anything that's going to affect your daily grocery run is going to go down in the near future. So that's hurting folks who are living paycheck to paycheck and that have a budget to live on. And so that's the issue, is that you're seeing, the dichotomy of folks who have a lot of money and folks who are just barely scraping by. And that, it really is going to determine if you're going to be successful in this environment, if you can budget properly and if you can live within your means.
Dashia, a lot of people would be called middle class seem like they have to struggle a lot more now just to pay those bills every single month. What do you see happening?
Yeah, when we start looking even back past this winter, like literally a month ago, people were struggling to pay energy bills based on CNET's latest findings. And even when we look into it a little deeper on how people are even spending their tax refunds that they're getting right now, they're not using that frivolously. They're using it to pay down bills, pay down credit card debt, save money. So it really speaks to where we are in the economy right now. It's not really a time where we're seeing a lot of just like leisure spending, but more so focused on what can we do to really get by and how can we make the most out of the next couple of months without stretching our budgets too thin, without getting into more credit card debt if it's already there, even thinking about borrowing rates, what that looks like for people even coming into just say they need a new car or even they have to take out this money. So it's definitely a time where we're being a lot more cautious, especially in thinking about the middle class. But more importantly, it's a time where if you go back to thinking, well, it's a good time to save with savings rates, it's a good time to invest in terms of investing, but it can be very careful when thinking about living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly, and that's what they say more and more Americans are doing right now, it seems.
Yes, correct.
Lindsay, you're concerned and you focus a lot of your work on the mind-money connection. The atmosphere just to a lot of people, even people who are doing fairly well and seem pretty stable, is this one of instability and uncertainty. What does that do to us in terms of our mindset?
Yeah, as a financial therapist and as a social worker, I can see the financial stress really impacting my clients and the folks who are attending my workshops. Even on my website, the most trending post is a post I wrote years ago about how to emotionally and financially prepare for layoffs. So even folks who are not directly impacted are very worried about it. And the way that money worries show up looks like how trauma can show up. It looks like how anxiety can show up. So it can lead to racing thoughts, being forgetful, having trouble sleeping, literal aches and pains. And all of those things can then impact us outside of just when we are thinking about money. It can impact us at work. It can impact us with our children and in our communities. So it definitely impacts us beyond the spreadsheet and the dollars in our budgets.
Stay with us, there's more to come.
Check in with what those money worries are and think about what are the action steps that you can take to dial down those particular fears.
Mark, you say unemployment is down, but there's a lot of people. You see a lot of industries where there's layoffs or people who are retiring. Those positions are not being replaced. What about the job instability that people are feeling?
Yeah, and listen, I've seen folks that have had government jobs that you would thought of, a few years ago being something that is, safe, and a government job is, you're going to get paid, and they really never laid folks off as long as you did your work. That's all changing. So you're seeing a large swath of the workers who are government employees be very concerned about jobs and layoffs with Doge in the background, and I think rightfully so, because this country is very much in debt and by the trillions, and so if you look at the interest that we're paying on the debt, it now is over what we spend on defense annually, just the interest on the debt. So imagine having a credit card and your interest payment is more than your mortgage payment on your credit cards. So that's what's going on with the U.S. economy in regards to finances. And so folks should definitely be prepared to possibly be laid off if, number one, you have your manager coming after you and giving you reprimand for any kind of behavioral action or things like that. This is the time where companies are going to be probably trimming the bottom 10% of their workforce. And so you really got to make sure and be honest with yourself, are you in on the chopping block if that happens? And if so, you better have an emergency fund that's 6 months of fixed expenses. If you're single and married, you might be able to get away with 4. And so, that's really important. That emergency fund and looking for a new job is so important, because if you don't, you might have to be forced to move or possibly go into foreclosure.
Lindsay, what about that feeling prepared for any kind of emergency? What does that do to us? And what do you think people need to be doing in this time where, our whole economy, our whole world, our lifestyle, everything is going through a huge transformation, I think.
There's so much good financial advice out there. And when we are feeling anxious, when we are feeling nervous and we're hearing competing advice, it can be really overwhelming. And for most of us, we go to one of two places. We either avoid it and we don't look at our budget, we turn off the news, we don't read the emails from our employers about our 401ks, or we go in the other direction and we overconsume information. And so I invite people right now to really think about what are the financial steps that I need to take to keep myself safe. As Mark mentioned, it's a great goal to have a 6 to 8 month emergency fund, but for most Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck or have $400 or $500 in their checking account, it can feel really daunting to think about saving up 6 months of expenses. So I invite people to start small, and this does two things. It helps them to see that A, they have the capacity to work toward financial goals. So set a goal of saving putting $400 in an emergency fund. And the second thing that it does is it builds momentum. It creates this positive momentum flywheel so people can see I'm capable of doing this. It's something within my capacity. And what are the things that I can do to get there? So I invite people to break it down, to go small, to take it step by step, and really think through what are the things financially that I need to do for myself and that matters to me and my family.
Dashia, what about the impact of AI too? We've seen some departments and various businesses, administrative jobs, things that people were working at kind of a middle management level, totally wiped out basically and being replaced by some type of AI or a move towards AI. Well, what about these replacements and what do you see happening in terms of technology impacting on this?
My recommendation is always to evolve with AI. So yes, we do see that AI is definitely transforming the workforce, even just how we do our jobs, the abilities that are even thinking about what can be done in a matter of seconds versus what may take even just someone maybe an hour or two. That being said, if you are thinking about your job being replaced by AI, look at other skills that you can take on that maybe can't be replaced by AI. So for example, if you are such as a writer, such as myself, yes, AI can definitely spin up an article, but can AI actually edit that article for you? Can it bring a unique perspective? So seeing how you can evolve beyond just what your normal day-to-day job is, as Mark said, being prepared, making sure that you have an understanding of what is actually happening at your job, what are the next steps, what are the goals in terms of the job, and how can you make yourself valuable in all of those propositions going forward. That's not to say AI is not going anywhere. It is definitely evolving. In my opinion, those robots are getting smarter. So definitely making sure that you have that understanding of how that impacts your job, but what skills you can take on that maybe AI can't do.
And I don't
That's
really
right.
see that there's many jobs out there that folks are doing that AI might not be able to do better unless you're looking at building a home, being a plumber, an electrician.
Right.
But most jobs, including mine, I mean, I'm telling you, in the next 20 years, you're going to probably have a robo advisor that will give you decent advice in regards to your financial picture. And so for folks like me, I've got to always be reinventing myself, making sure that I'm visiting businesses on the ground. AI can't do that. Giving advice about all a myriad of issues that could face a family or a business. And so really finding to that point how you can not only work with AI, but do better than AI and things that AI cannot do at all. So if you're thinking that you're answering phones at a dentist's office and that job's going to be there, I wouldn't be too secure about that. I would think about figuring out a way maybe how you can add to the dentist's revenue by calling customers proactively. So that's just an example of things that I think that you need to be thinking about in regards to how AI is going to impact every single sector of the economy.
Dashia, in terms of our spending habits, in terms of, have you seen any changes, in people in the last year or two with that?
People are definitely cutting out that everyday eating out, leisure spending, travel. As much as we might think like, oh, that's still the normal, that's not the norm for a lot of people nowadays. They're looking for ways that maybe they can cut that cost if they are going to travel, for example, right? Like maybe taking road trips, staycations are becoming a lot more popular instead of maybe the bigger vacations. So the spending habits are changing, definitely. But one thing when we start thinking about the balancing act of budgeting, paying bills, still trying to find that fun, it does go back to starting small, even if it's just planning for those little moments where you want to go out to eat or those little moments where, for example, celebrating your anniversary is one thing. People are still doing those things, but they're doing them in a smaller way because their budgets are tight right now. They're living paycheck to paycheck. So it goes back to starting small in terms of saving, preparing that emergency fund. And honestly, side hustles are still a really big deal. So if the rent is due, for example, it might mean at this point, unfortunately, that taking on that second job or even that extra skill set, might bring in a little bit more money.
Mark, people do get lump sums of money, like some people are getting their tax refunds or whatever, or come into a chunk of money and they try to go, okay, I got to make money on this money now. This is the only time I'm going to be able to do this. You see people talking about crypto, people talking about different stocks. What do you think the average person should be looking at?
Well, listen, it really depends on your personal situation. And so you really got to look at, what do you have coming down the pike in the next 6 months, a year? That's the first thing you got to do when you do any kind of financial planning is do I need this money to possibly pay a major bill coming down the next 6 months? You can't really invest money that you need in 6 months, because what happens is you're taking risk anytime you invest. So you might need $10,000. Your refund was something around that, and then you invest it, and the market goes down 20%. Now you have less money, and then you have a bad experience in investing. What you want to do is, when you do invest, you want to be able to stick in it for 5 to 7 years on average. If you don't have that kind of time horizon, you shouldn't be taking really outsized bets. If you look at crypto, for instance, and Bitcoin, price of Bitcoin, it was at $16,000 a Bitcoin like 2 years ago. Now it's at 80 something thousand. So, if you had bought it at the wrong time, you had a very negative experience owning crypto. So even with the crypto thing, make sure you know that this stuff is for the long haul. And then everything else, with short-term money, you want to go into something like a money market fund that's paying around, 4.5%.
The good news is, based off of a recent CNET survey, when we look at how people are spending their tax refunds, they are putting it toward that money toward paying down bills, paying off credit card debt, saving money. So it sounds like we're taking all of the right steps, but it is that good reminder that if you know you have debt right now, maybe thinking about the long term is something you should hold off on just a little bit.
And Lindsay, what about spending money as a stress reliever, which it is for some people?
Yeah, for a lot of people, it is a stress reliever, but I often invite people to think about what are some other ways that you can relieve stress, and what are the times in your life in which you're finding yourself tapping to pay or swiping your card. Is it at the end of a long day of work, and what we're realizing is that you're just burnt out and exhausted? Is there something else you can do outside of swiping or tapping? Are you finding yourself constantly spending a lot of money, kind of wishful spending money on gym memberships, on new workout clothes, thinking that if you have the right gear, if you join the right gym, then you'll work out? We want to flip that a little bit and think through, can you go for a few runs, and once you wear out your current pair of shoes, then it's a great choice to invest in a new pair of shoes. But when we are tapping to get that dopamine or getting that serotonin, thinking about other ways that we can get it for free or at a lower cost.
Lindsay, give us a couple of tips of what people need to do to stay in a positive frame of mind. Do you subscribe to this, be grateful for what you got theory?
Yes, be grateful for the things you have, and check in with what those money worries are, and think about what are the action steps that you can take to dial down those particular fears. For example, maybe right now you're in a stable job and you have an emergency fund, but you're seeing all of these layoffs. An actionable step that you can take is to make sure that your resume is up to date, network now, update your LinkedIn. Just in case, it's so much easier to do those things when we're not fresh in the midst of a layoff. So think through, what are the things I'm worried about? What are the things that if I had a few extra things in place would help quiet down that anxiety? So yes, be grateful, and also take action.
Mark, what should people be thinking about now? Your average person, not your rich person, not your person that's really on the outs, because that's a whole different set of issues, but just the average working person right now, what should be their top 3 things they should be doing?
First thing is paying off debt, and paying down debt as much as you can, because of interest rates are crusher when they're above 20%. 2 is have an emergency fund. I can't reiterate that enough. Most Americans do not have this. And that is, 6 months, 8 months of fixed expenses. And in order to know what that number is, you got to have a budget. Most folks don't even have a budget. And so your budget should be something that's exactly the dollar amount that you spend every single month to the penny. And then the third thing is figuring out what your long-term and short-term goals are. So you can figure out how you invest. If you have long-term goals like retirement, you should be really aggressive with saving for retirement and investing for retirement. And that's where you can go and buy some of these high-flying stocks that you've heard of, because you have a 20 to 30-year time horizon.
Dashia, what advice do you have for people from everything you see, all the articles and all the research that you guys do?
Make sure you put together a plan now. It seems that there's a lot of economic uncertainty when we start looking at even the prices of even eggs and what could happen next. Having a plan, even beyond your emergency fund, see if there's some way that you can stack just a little extra money to account for that grocery bill being a little bit higher. As Lindsay pointed out, make sure you take a look at your resume, see what skills you can take on. If you have a skill, for example, I'm a spin instructor, that's an additional income for me. See what you can go ahead ahead and do to beef up your income so that you can beef up your savings and pay down your debt. We don't know what's coming as much as we are planning and preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. Now's the time to get your finances in check and make sure you keep an eye on the market. If you are looking into investing, or even if you're inching closer to retirement, make sure that you're preparing for the moves there as well.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Smart Money Moves. You can watch it again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and the Fox Local app. Remember, use your mind as your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.